Ryan Banta, welcome back to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be on. It was an awesome experience the first time, and anytime I get to, get on here with such a wonderful content provider as yourself, Erica, it's an exciting thing, and I look forward to our conversation.
I had to have you back on because last time you were on, you talked a lot about speed, technique, and sprinting fast to be fast, but we didn't really touch on the strength piece of speed. And I've read your book, Sprinter's Compendium, multiple times. And one of my favorite chapters was actually the strength chapter because I think a lot of sprinters and even soccer players who are trying to improve speed, they don't really think of getting in the weight room as the first thing. So I'm really pumped to dive into that. And I was personally inspired myself by watching the 100-meter in the Olympics and just how jacked these girls were. And like it was just so amazing to see. And I now am starting to train for a 60-meter and the 200-meter for Team USA in the Masters division for March. So I
Awesome.
just started my training program and I am lifting 4 days a week, sprinting 3 days a week, and it's insanity. So I wanted to announce that on here and share with you because I love sprinting, I love track, and I just wanted to do something competitive again.
Yeah, well, and then thankfully in our sport, because it's not totally a contact sport with other humans, it's definitely a contact sport with Earth, and we can talk about why, weight training is probably important for us to be able to take on the Earth in our steps and context of the ground and our explosive nature. But yeah, it's such a cool thing that there's that option. And then especially depending on where you're at regionally, there's like some really good competitions that you can be fit for life, but also have the competitive aspect that helps you. So, congratulations with that. I'm super excited and can't wait to see how fast you're going to go.
I am really excited because I've been timing my speed since being a retired soccer player, and I've already seen some great improvements, but now actually training for a meet, I'm just like, this is gonna be crazy. So I will keep you posted. But I did run track in high school. I did the 200-meter and then the 300-meter in indoor track, and I loved it, but I eventually had to choose one sport in high school because of overuse, and it was just too much. But I always wonder, dang, what would have happened if I tried to pursue college
Oh
track?
man, don't tease the coaches. There's probably people who are out there like, dang it, if we would have just got her to run track
Ugh,
and field. I have that conversation all the time. One of my colleagues in the social studies department where I teach, he's the head girls soccer coach, and I'm the head girls track and field coach. In Missouri, it's in the same season, so we're constantly like trying to get the same kids out for our program and stuff. And you know how it is if a young person runs all the time playing soccer and they tend to be pretty good at soccer, they also tend to be pretty fast. So there's a lot of crossover in those skill sets for sure.
yeah, absolutely. The track coaches are always trying to recruit soccer players for like the
Yeah,
200-meter, the 400-meter, the 4x4. It's so funny. But
totally.
there is a lot of good carryover, and I think sprinting is just so great for so many team sport athletes and just people in general. Why don't you just give a background on who you are for people who didn't tune into the previous episode, just as a reminder of your experience with training speed and track athletes?
Yeah, so I've been coaching track and field in Missouri since 2002, the spring of. I've been the head coach here at Parkway Central High School for since 2003, and over time, a lot of lessons learned and a lot of different experiences. I teach and coach at the same high school I went to, and one of the things that really frustrated me was that I felt like the female athletes were not given their due, and a lot of coaches were not nearly as serious as I thought they should be. And there were always girls that I actually went to school with when I was here at the high school that I was like, man, if somebody would have just gotten them out or if somebody would have given them that extra time, how special would these kids have been? And that led me to have the opportunity to take over the program. And of course, we can get into it, but your first couple of years, you really don't know what you don't know. And my kids were successful in spite of me. But over time, with a lot of good mentors and a lot of good educational programming and things like this, where we have opportunities to talk to people who know a thing or two about a thing or two, I got to learn quite a bit. And, we've been top five team 9 times, which is quite a bit in the time that I've been coaching, and have numerous state record holders. Had the blessing of coaching people who went on to be college All Americans at multiple different levels, and even Emily Sisson, who ran the marathon in this last Olympics, and in the previous Olympics before that ran the 10K. But I'm supposed to be the sprint guy. And so one of the things that led me to writing the Sprinters Compendium was what I felt there was a gap in education. And I had a lot of connections with people who are very open, and track and field coaches are very much more open to sharing some of the tricks of the trade and their philosophy, because they are an abundant mindset coach, because they kind of have to be in order to get 19 events on the track and multiple kids in each one of those events. There's a lot that we have to do in terms of our openness to be able to be successful. And so that's kind of my spiel, if you will, of where I am and who I am. And I'm very blessed and thankful that we've had a lot of really wonderful, hardworking kids and good assistant coaches who have helped me along the way, or mentors who are probably the most important, to show me the right way to do a variety of different things, including strength.
And I would say you've been one of my mentors from afar, just following you on Twitter, but also reading Sprinter's Compendium several times and revisiting it and just trying new things with my soccer athletes because they always want to improve speed. That is probably the number one thing they come to me for is improving their speed, their acceleration, and just that extra burst onto the ball. Now, I know soccer athletes will never be track runners, but we can get them pretty close in the sense of building that power, building that strength. So, for strength, I really want to touch on that today. A lot of people wouldn't think about getting in the weight room for speed. And there's this misconception that getting under the iron might slow someone down if done wrong. So maybe you can let the listeners know how to correctly incorporate strength for those speed improvements.
Well, first and foremost, weight training helps most people in most situations and circumstances across all sports. Can strength training make you faster? Yes, as a part of the symphony of the orchestra of human performance, strength plays a role in improving a person's output, improving a person's ability to impulse into the ground, to deliver strength. And then it depends on like the type of sprinter you have as well. Some people are pushers and some people are pullers. And if you're a pusher, then absolutely strength is going to matter. And when it comes to like, the issues of overflow, where you have motor units that are taking on an action that they normally wouldn't take on because of fatigue, strength plays even a bigger role in the sustainability of training without injury, reducing injury, strengthening the skeletal system so that we don't have stress fractures, stress reactions, and giving female athletes a hormone spike. So there's all sorts of things that training can do for an athlete in a variety of sports, and also make people faster. And then the other thing we have to remember too is that most of the athletes we come across, they're not going to be Olympic sprinters, and so like they're going to be at a novice level, even if they're an elite soccer player. The fastest soccer player, the fastest American football player are still going to be behind a person like Noah Lyles, no matter what Tyreek Hill thinks and no matter what he used to be able to do. But with that, though, different sports need different things and different positions in soccer. If you're playing defense and you're constantly being put into contact with an offending player or a set piece, you're going to need to be stronger. Because you're going to need to be able to push off the ball, get a better position, move the person off the ball without fouling them or getting a card. And these are types of things that people sometimes don't understand, is this idea of resilience, different moments in time in sport, and things like that. And then specifically for sprinting, we don't want people to be the most absolutely strong power lifter in the world. But when you combine that part of the recipe with everything else that you're doing in the myriad of options that you have, strength training is incredibly important for developing a powerful and robust and resilient athlete.
Mhm. What are some of the best lifts that soccer players can be doing to help build their strength for speed?
So anything that you can do in the posterior chain is very important. And if you look at soccer players, like what's one of the reasons to do this? When you're moving at full speed, when you're at full flight, your body is being basically pulled over your center of mass with your hamstring in a single leg position. And obviously, if you look at elite soccer and you think about how many injuries, I think I saw one study at one point that like 25% of a Premier League soccer player or something like that gets a hamstring pull over the course of their season. Now, part of that's because it seems as if soccer never has an off season. So I think that there's an issue with that too, that we don't allow a chance for a different block of training. So when we're looking at that posterior, we're looking at Romanian deadlifts, right? We're looking at doing some roll unders on the stability ball. We're looking at Nordic hamstring curls. We're looking at things where we're trying to develop that posterior chain. The squat is also important. Doing some of your Olympic lifts as well that produce a lot of power, also with the strength and weight component. And then also not neglecting things like medicine balls and some depth jumping as well to build up that elasticity or to support the opposite end of something that you're working on where it seems more absolute in strength, that you're balancing that with something more ballistic on the other side. And so we can kind of get into that, how I do my phases with that as well, as we discuss.
Yeah, that would be great if you can just go over the different phases of training. If you have an athlete in the off season, what are you starting with in the weight room? And then kind of what are you progressing to in terms of sets and reps, eccentrics, and different tempos?
So when we talk about our general themes, a lot of people don't like general strength because it sounds general. It sounds like it's busy work or whatever. What people don't understand though is that you're trying to create a body of support. So what is general strength, or what I like to call, posture buttressing, which is this idea of we're going to buttress this athlete that we're creating. And as we're building these things in, we've got to have this buttressing to hold everything together as we add things to it. And that's why I call it that. And so that's going to look more general in nature. Then a lot of people don't like to do hypertrophic work because they're like, oh, hypertrophic work, and that would be phase two. Oh, it adds too much weight. It makes the muscle belly too big, whatever. Well, number one, first of all, that change in the muscle belly is going to change leverage on the joint. Number two, it's going to allow for the connective tissues, both your ligaments, right, and your tendons to get stronger so that they can support the work that you're going to do later. And you can teach technique through some of those movements more properly before you start to go with some heavy absolute activity like maximal lifting. So then maximal lifting would be our phase three, where we're going to definitely drop the number of reps. We're going to increase the intensity and also decrease the density. We're going to create a lot of space in between our lifts. Then from there, you can go in a number of different directions. What I like to do there is I like to go into a proprioceptive type of lifting. This is where we're going to incorporate a block of balance work, single leg work, things like that, that the body now has to move some heavy weight, but in a way that's calling upon the central nervous system to do a little bit more work after we've already developed a strong base of connective tissue, tendons, and bones. We've created a nice muscle belly, and we've increased bone density, and then we've also gotten used to moving heavy weight, right? So this is a natural progression. Now we're going to add an element of imbalance or awareness or single leg. Then from there, I like to do what is a fast as possible phase, which would be velocity based training. So now we're not so much worried about increasing the weight on the bar. We're more worried about speeding the bar up. And in fact, timing, how long does it take to get through the set? becomes the more important thing. How fast can we move the bar? I call it the hillbilly tendo unit, where we'll have like two people spotting, one person timing, and the other person lifting in a rack. So you have four people going at one time, and then the speed of the lift matters more. And then again, what should the speed be, the velocity be? Well, we can get into the math of that I'm not nearly as strong about. But what I can tell you is that for the kid over themselves is what I'm looking for, right? It's them over themselves. Are they speeding up the bar, getting through the full range of motion? And then the last phase would be a ballistic phase, which is now we're going to have explosive action, doing some French contrast lifting, doing a lot of jumping with the activities, a lot of explosive. So you've got the plyometric bench. You could do like a heavy squat followed by a jump squat. You could do that followed by a depth jump, followed by, wall jumping, whatever it may be that you can combine with those lifts to make it more explosive. And then from there, you've got your transition phase, and then you run through it again. Even though people are like, I don't want to do this general stuff. Well, you can shorten that down. So instead of having a block of 6 weeks, it could be 3 weeks, it could be 2 weeks, depending on how long your season is and your training time that you have, your annual calendar would look like. Well, soccer players, if they're playing all year round, something must be done to touch on that with some frequency so that there can be improvement done. Or what I feel like is you're going to work on a timeline where something bad is going to happen because you're going to have diminishing return and usage issues. So that's kind of how I handle my phases. Now, how I handle switching from one thing to another, anytime I introduce a new phase, I want to build upon a previous exercise. So my athletes are always doing an Olympic lift. They're always doing a squat. They're always doing a deadlift, and they're always doing a bench. But how the squat looks, how the Olympic lift looks, how the bench looks, and how the deadlift looks, that changes with the themes. When I introduce the new theme, we usually run through a very simple system of we're just doing one set of every of these things because we don't know how you're going to feel. So we don't want to give you the 7 sets of squat and deadlift and all this kind of stuff. We'll do one set. That's it. Then day 2, we'll do 2 sets of whatever this new 8-step routine or exercise combo might be. And then finally, when we get to day 3, now I'm giving you all the reps and sets of all of the exercises that we now know what your response is from your body, how your body reacts, and we know that we're not going to get hurt. We have an opportunity to teach you the new skills, and it allows the body to not go through that delayed onset of muscle soreness, which is obviously a body's emergency response to keep you from getting hurt. But when you're that sore and you still have to compete, especially if you're playing for a scholarship or an NIL or a pro contract, you don't have the convenience of stepping away and allowing your body to recover. And so that's a natural progression that we do in between those phases to try to get the athletes used to what they're doing, to allow them time to adjust.
I love it. It sounds complicated from the outside, but it's actually very simple. And you're
Yeah,
just doing little tweaks along the way. And it really just reminds people that they have to stick with the strength training, primarily have an off season, but stick with it year round so that you can make those small improvements over time. And I think a lot of soccer players think that they can just drop off from strength training and they're still going to magically improve speed and performance. But strength is just such a huge piece in that speed that needs to be consistent.
for sure. And one of the things, Bob Alejo, who is part of Moneyball with the Oakland Athletics, he's now in California on the West Coast. One of the things that he talked about is making sure that you're getting something done. So, like with baseball, these guys are playing, 150 plus games, plus an off season, plus a preseason. And he's like, look, I know I can't get you through this list of 15 weight room routines and all of the reps and sets, but can we deadlift today? And can we squat tomorrow? Can we bench the next day? And then we come back and we deadlift again. So can I get one thing in to touch upon it consistently to have these incremental small wins that allow the body to see it with enough frequency and then also maybe make some gains along the way. And what people always have a misconception is like these things are completely separate, and they don't interact with each other. Like if you do a track and field workout, right? And then you go to the weight room and you expect to max out in PR without having a track and field workout in front of it and reach those type of PRs. That's not going to happen. Like you have to understand, like I just did an hour on the track or an hour and a half, and now I'm in the weight room. My numbers are, my absolute numbers, my PRs are going to be suppressed. But in this block of time, if I'm a track and field athlete and then a football athlete for the other 9 months out of the year, I'm still going to get a benefit from all this speed and everything else. And then when the summer comes back around and it's time for me to do all my lifting and getting big for football, or I've got to do all my soccer drills and run in and out of, agility ladders or whatever crazy nonsense that some of these people are making these athletes do, like you still have to get this stuff done and understand that there's a season for everything, not just like literally every sport, but there's a season in life for different points of emphasis in different blocks. And I think that's the big mistake that a lot of strength and conditioning practitioners don't quite get when it comes to team sports. That it's like, I just got to get that number up. I got to get that weight up, that weight. I've got to add more weight to the athlete. I've got to add more weight to the bar. And it's like, but what about the speed of the bar? What about the kid's vertical leap? What about the kid's 30-meter fly? Right. And then the worry is, well, I don't want to be sore for the next game and the next game and the next game. Well, let's devise a system that allows you enough time to recover to still get the strength component in, because the strength component is going to make you more survivable. It's going to make you faster. It's going to reduce hamstring injuries, and it's going to make you more powerful, especially for step number one and step number two, which in a soccer game, that could be the difference between you getting around the defender and getting everybody on sides with the kick. So I'm not looking at you being a 100-meter dash athlete, but can I make you efficient at full flight? Can I make you powerful in step one or step zero? Those are the things that I feel like the weight room can help you with.
Thank you for touching on that because I think in season is a time where soccer players do fear getting in the weight room because they think it's going to be too much or they're not going to be recovered enough. But I think it's such a good point that if you can only accomplish one or two main lifts for that day, that's fine. And then you compound that over many months, and then into the next season, you are going to improve over time. And you're going to do way better than the kid who only trained in the off season and then just fell off. So I would rather have someone train year round where we're like microdosing it and we're building that muscle and they're going to eventually see the improvements. And I think we're seeing now in women's soccer that these girls are becoming so strong and robust. I mean, you watch some of these games at even just the D1, D3 top 25 level, and these girls are strong and they're big, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, they're bulky," but I mean, they're powerful with those bodies. I mean, they are performing at a high level. And again, they don't need to look as jacked as the 100 meters in the Olympics, but some of these Division 1 girls are pretty freaking close and they are fast.
They
So,
are. And the
yeah.
other thing I would jump in on that too is tell you, like, you know, typically a woman typically has a lot less testosterone than a man. And so like I always tell my girls, I'm like, you're not gonna look like the biggest football player, guys. You don't need to be afraid of the aesthetics of being strong. And now I can't say this to my female athletes, but being strong is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. It's aesthetically pleasing, so you don't need to be worried about that. But you're also, while you're not going to get big and bulky as some of these guys, you will get a little bit bigger. But more importantly, you'll be able to contract stronger than them, right? And like you said, if we just get one lift in, so if we can do a power clean, if we can do a snatch, if we can do a deadlift, if we can do a squat, like the bang for the buck from just that one lift and all of the motor units that it touches on and all of the strength that you get from that in many ways can, how can I say, fill in a lot of gaps that maybe a 20 lift program would do if you were just lifting, but you're not. You're playing the sport, which has its own strength, its own power component that then can be supported by the lift. And yeah, you don't need to be afraid. And on top of it, the reality is, as you mentioned, You're going to play big time soccer. You're going to play Olympic soccer. You're going to play international soccer. You're going to play Division 1 soccer. These girls are going to be strong and they're going to be powerful. You cannot be allergic to the weight room. What I've always found is like, track and field people are afraid of lifting where football people are afraid of running, and in team sports that never seem to have an off season, they're afraid of everything except for the sport, in the game. And I think that in all three of those of the trifecta there, I think that everyone needs a little self check of reality.
I love that you said strong is beautiful. It is an amazing thing. And I've found that eventually when girls buy into the weight room and they get the hang of it, they grow to really love it. So, anyone listening who hasn't tried it yet, just get in there, get uncomfortable. It's going to be really weird at first, but you'll learn how much it helps for your speed and your sport. And I've even seen girls build really great upper body strength, and that has really helped with speed. So I know you know a lot more about why this happens than I do, but why is upper body strength, like chin ups or strict pull ups, really good for speed?
So there's an interesting thing called the crossover effect. Dan Path has talked about this a lot. And basically, what happens is like when a person would get a limb injured and they couldn't lift off of that limb, the old thought was, well, we're just going to avoid any lift on either side of the body because we don't want to overdevelop one side. And then we're going to have a bigger deficit that we have to bridge between the injured side and the healthy side. Well, that they've actually found out is that if you continue to keep working out because of that crossover effect, that you're getting a shorter time. We truncate the comeback time, the rehab time for the injured limb or the surgically repaired limb to come back quicker. There's also chemicals that get shared out through the body and a hormone spike that gets shared out with the body that allows for the body to develop muscle, to improve tendons, to improve connective tissue that comes from strength training. Then on top of that, what everybody forgets when it really, to answer your question specifically, is that muscles wrap around, muscles go up and down, and they go side to side. And all of it is driven by the spine. So as your body gets stronger all the way through, you can increase the amount of force you can put into the ground, whether it's coming from your upper body or your lower body. Now, there obviously are diminishing returns to getting and looking like a weeble wobble. Like if people who know me have seen me, I have a physique like Launchpad McQuack. I got this big chest and I got these little itty bitty bird legs. And even though I had a big squat and a big deadlift, I got these teeny tiny ankles, which actually kind of helped me be a pretty good sprinter. But I got real big up top to my detriment. But early on, as I was making that climb in the weight room, there were a lot of positives that came out of that for my ability to use the arms to push through. At full flight sprint mechanics, great arm mechanics provide 7% of the lift off of the ground. So people who have really bad arm mechanics, they're losing that. They're leaking energy kinetically side to side as opposed to going in the direction they need to go. But also they're losing the ability to just be explosive and poppy because they're discoordinated or they just don't have the strength to actually apply force in that nice, beautiful figure 4 position that someone is when the foot's under mass and the other foot's stepping over the knee and coming through quite nicely. So the upper body provides that additional support to the locomotion because of all of those things, because of the spine, because of the way the muscles wrap, because of the ability to coordinate the force into the ground, the chemical release and the power and the crossover effect.
That makes a lot of sense, and I'm starting to notice that a lot in my own sprinting program, just incorporating the upper body lifts and even doing, like, bear crawling where I'm working on that cross body coordination. I feel so connected when I'm sprinting, like, it's effortless. And I really encourage everyone to work on upper body. Soccer players should not be all legs. Yes, hamstrings, glutes, and quads are great, but you need to balance that out. It's so important for speed.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of how strong is too strong, I see this a lot on Twitter. It is a big debate in the strength and conditioning community, but a lot of people are tweeting that you can get too strong or lift too much that it hinders speed potentially. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there are absolutes. What are you trying to chase? What is the most important thing in sport, right? So for me, we do a bunch of testing on the first 2 days of track and field season. And I have longitudinal data now from all of these tests of all these kids forever. We used to look at vertical leap, we do standing long jump, we do 5 repeat bounds, we do an overhead medicine ball back toss, we do a basketball toss and a softball toss to kind of show javelin. We do gymnastics abilities, so that can you walk on your hands, can you do a cartwheel, can you do a backflip, whatever. We have all these tests that we do, and we do a standing 30 and we do a flying 30. And what we found is that the flying 30 is highest correlation to a kid who will eventually be a state qualifier or an all-state athlete. And even if they're a distance kid, it's the same. It's just if you take the chunk of distance kids, look at who has the fastest flying 30, and lo and behold, they tend to be the best distance kid. Same thing with the throwers, right? So there's a certain amount of strength that is good, but for every pound that you have, it's an additional amount of force that you have to create. And one of the problems is when it's not so much can you lift too much, it's lifting the wrong way. Getting too big doesn't really happen if you're doing all of the other necessary work for that sport. So like for example, the sport of track and field is all about getting faster. So as long as you're handling all of the running and special endurance and speed endurance and acceleration work that you're supposed to do for running, the weight training is never going to, and your body's system is never going to put on so much pounds, because you're getting a fitness and a cardio aspect from that training that's not going to allow it. The problem is where we spend more time and we chase the wrong thing. We're chasing the wrong rabbit. We're going in the wrong direction, and like I got too big. I always would say, and the reason why I got so big is because I was trying to run the 100 instead of running the 400, which was actually probably my better event. And I was wanting to get to 200 pounds so I could play running back in college as well. And I'm like, once I get to 200 pounds, and then I never saw under 200 pounds for a really long time until I changed my diet, because I found out that I was type 2 diabetic. And I ballooned from when my college weight, which I was 185 pounds, I ballooned all the way up to 235 pounds. I'm only 5'8" and a half, and I was over 230 pounds. I was the strongest I had ever been, but I ain't winning anything but maybe a 5 meter sprint, or the hot dog eating contest on 4th of July at that point. So what happens is you start to see that weight discoordinates the athlete. So we had a young man who was very fast. He ended up running for Iowa State. He could put on a lot of muscle. And at that point, we had to say, look, you are strong enough, you're big enough, you're thick enough, you're starting to look odd, you're starting to look stiff. And that's where the coach's eye and your mother wit or your coach's wit comes into kind of seeing, well, what's the best for that particular athlete? Or what's the sport this kid's trying to pursue? If you're an American football player, well, you probably need to get bigger because you need more momentum, and the sport is an impact sport. But if you're a soccer player, you don't need to continue to get so jacked that you can't move. And the soccer and the conditioning, the sprinting and running plays a more important role than the weightlifting, but the weightlifting must happen to support those other two things. And that's what's so tough about that question, because like people talk about like, is your squat 2.5 times your body weight? That's strong enough. Probably so. But there's some people who are even stronger than that who broke world records in the 100-meter dash. So it just kind of depends on who you are and what your body style is, and are you a pusher or a puller? If you're a pusher, you're all hydraulic. If you're a puller, you're all electric. You're hamstring, you're bouncy. When you see an athlete like that, you're like, oh, that guy's wired right. You see a pusher, they're real thick, and they do everything from like literally applying force for as long as they can, for as far as they can. Those are two very different looking athletes that could be playing a similar sport.
I'm glad you mentioned that strength shouldn't be the only thing we do. Just because we're talking about it in this episode doesn't mean just do strength. You still have to do all the other things. And I know we discussed some of it on our last episode, but to complement strength, what should soccer players also be doing to really improve their speed?
Well, I mean, you got to sprint. You got to sprint a lot. And then if you limited in terms of like, let's say you're in a northern state where you can't get out and run fast safely, right? Then the option there is you've got to be doing some sort of plyometric activity, every other day. So you're looking at like 2 to 3 times a week. There should be some kind of pure speed work or pure plyo work that's going in to support the soccer and the strength training. If you're looking at somebody who is a college athlete or a high school athlete who's doing the sport 6 days a week, 5 to 6 days a week, you need to have that. That needs to be a part of your program, because the reality is when they did Anatoly Bondarchuk wrote this book called The Transfer of Training, and he's this Soviet coach who actually coached the hammer. And one of the reasons why the Canadians did so well in the throws is his influence. And his system was built around, all right, for the particular sport, the particular event, we're going to do all these different types of tests. What correlates the highest? And what they found, obviously, is that plyometric training is the closest thing to sprinting. So, of course, the better you get at the plyos, the better you get at the jumping, because all sprinting is jumping fast, right? But then if you don't have the requisite strength, you don't have all of the things that we mentioned. So there has to be some of that in your practice. And I would also say, not that I am a feed the cats guy like Tony Holler, but I would say that the speed has to be the thing. If you're trying to improve speed, then improve speed. Don't make it something that happens at the end of practice. Make sure you're neurologically fresh. It's happening at the beginning of practice. Because fitness in soccer, like these people like that are baseball pitchers that go out and run miles because they got to be in shape. Like that's so antiquated to the reality of the sport. It's so antithetical to what you should actually be doing. Yes, there's a lot of running happening, but a lot of it is run really fast, jog, stop, wait. Run really fast, jog, stop, wait. So then your training for pure speed should have some sort of elements of all of those things. You should have some waiting, you should have some jogging, but you damn well better have some sprinting.
And for the distance of the sprints, 30 meters, 50 meters, opening up to 100 meters, beneficial for soccer players.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things because people talk about the soccer pitch and the length of the pitch, but how many times do you see somebody like basically off a corner kick take the ball all the way out from, a set piece and run all the way down the other side of the field and then score a goal all on their own? That never ever happens. So the idea instead is, can you be fast and slow for 20 to 30 meters at a time, right? Because that's about the amount of time that you're going to keep your foot on the ball at full tilt, or that's about the amount of distance that you're going to be trying to run on sides as somebody's lobbing a ball over the defense to try to put a good foot contact on the ball for a one timer. So you've got to have the ability to beat the person, because now if you've beaten them in 20 to 30 meters, the only way that they can impede you is to foul you. They have to foul you. So then that means that there has to be a lot of sprint speed between that 20 to 30, which is the absolute speed of a person anyway. You start to go beyond that and people start to get discoordinated and their velocity goes down. So it's probably not all that worth it to go beyond that distance too often when we're working on just pure speed.
Thanks for clarifying that. And then just coming back to other things soccer players can do. So you said plyometrics, and then would medicine ball work be good to incorporate into those lifts?
A hundred
Especially
percent.
like in season when, they want to do like explosive but non-impact stuff.
Sure, and I love that for transition phases too.
Mhm.
So, like, because what happens is again, you go from the posture buttressing to the hypertrophic to the maximal to the proprioceptive to the speed lifts to the ballistic lifts. Well, then you could take the ballistic lift and move the bars out of the situation, right? Move all of the jumping components out of the weight room that you had. And now we're just throwing medicine balls. So it actually unloads a lot, but yet maintains this idea of force production, right? And being powerful, not being strong, but being powerful, building that speed through the body. And so that allows the body to hold on to that for an extended period of time, but then you're not taking the risk in that championship phase or in a playoff situation, whatever your sport may have in the end. And then it allows for kind of a refresh for you to go back and support that whole system again. I love medicine balls and I love medicine ball work with plyometrics. So where we're dropping off of a depth jump, right? We're amortizing, we're exploding up, triple extending and throwing the ball either in front of us, forward, or behind us, or to the side. I love that stuff. I love doing hurdle hops with a medicine ball. And then at the last hurdle, jumping and exploding and pressing the medicine ball away from us and running and chasing the medicine ball. All those combinations of power and strength and speed are a beautiful thing when you put them together like that. And they create a nice bang for your buck type of exercise where you can get a lot done with that. And a medicine ball can travel. So it's like, oh, like I don't want to go to the weight room because it's like some random hotel gym or whatever. I can't get that done. Go to the parking lot, get your medicine ball, and go throw that thing around and do all of these different activities. And you can do a lot of plyos as well with that, as long as it's not snowy or icy outside. And you can get a lot done, which allows, again, you to fill in gaps between strength when you can come back to your facility and lift with your strength and conditioning coach or your trainer or whoever.
Have you found that a lot of athletes love medicine ball work and just throwing the ball around?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's more fun than throwing stuff. I mean, like when you're a little kid, you would skip rocks across the lake, right? Who could throw the ball the far? Who could throw the football the farthest, right? Who could shoot the farthest 3-pointer? Can I hit it from half court? Like that's a big deal as a kid, and it's because again, it's this idea of us being able to defy gravity with a missile. And it's really fun to do and it's entertaining. And that's one of the things where like sometimes the strength and conditioning coaches get too cute because they want to entertain. Well, figure out a way that you can entertain while still getting actual, real, necessary work. And yeah, I agree. I think medicine ball work is phenomenal for making it fun and entertaining and kind of shifting it up. And again, you can have a weight room without walls. You can do that without being in the weight room, which is such an advantage because sometimes walking back to the gym is a lot of time and the kids like, I don't want to do that, but they will buy into doing that and having fun. And I'll group them up where they're like throwing the medicine balls, like in a triangle or a square or whatever. So you can get a whole bunch of people doing all of this somewhat uninterrupted in an activity. And that also allows them to connect with their teammates and talk as they're waiting for their turn to explode the ball again.
Well, Ryan, this has been really great and just super helpful for everyone listening. You've helped me in my journey just with my own training and with my coaching. And I will link your book, Sprinter's Compendium, in the caption below so everyone can grab that. Is there anything else you want to leave the listeners with or anything exciting you have coming?
I do have a book called the Trainer's Companion that's coming up, which will help you design a lot of this training. So like people are like, well, now I know what workout I want to do, but how do I know how much to lift? How do I know how long to rest? How do I know what this scheme of reps and sets, what is it going to do to my performance? And so this book covers swimming, all the different strokes. It covers weightlifting for all the big lifts, power clean, snatch, squat, deadlift, bench. And it covers, everything from the standing 10 all the way out to continuous running. And it's all leveled out on ability. So you'll know, like, what does this mean for a standing 10 meters all the way out to a lactic threshold run if I was going to do that? Obviously, that's not going to be for all the same athlete, but it helps you kind of start to figure out what are the gaps in the athlete's abilities and what are their strengths. So that's a big book I have coming. And then certainly to the audience, feel free to reach out. I want to be a resource. This is why I believe God put me on this planet to do, is to try to reduce catastrophic errors in coaching that allow us to work with the young people to get them to their best abilities without having them really regret, like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that, or I wish I would have had this person know this at the time, because I wish I would have known some of this stuff when I was an athlete, but I absolutely wish I would have known this when I was responsible for other people's health, fitness, and performance. So please reach out.
I'll leave Ryan's Twitter in the caption below so that you can contact him. He is very responsive, which is awesome. So definitely reach out if you have any questions, and I will see you guys on the next episode. Thank you.
I guess.